Hello, BAC family around the world. Thank you so much for joining us for Wednesday's Woman. This is the second conversation in our International Women's Day and Women's History Month celebrations. I am so excited for today's interview and conversation. But before we get there, let me just remind you, in this environment, you can hear and see us, but we cannot hear or see you. So if you have a question or you have a comment, you want to say girl power, make sure you type that in the comments as we move forward. So before I introduce our panel, our speaker for today, I do want to show you just a brief video. This is from our recent trip to Cambodia, which was to check on a project that we have completed with Just a Drop, and you'll see some familiar faces, but let's check out this video.
The experience in Cambodia was more than I can dream of or think of. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, especially the connection that I have to Cambodia.
But what we have seen there, which according to me makes the difference, is the fact that Just a Drop really does the follow-up, really goes back to the villages, to the schools, do the training with people, and make them independent and able to maintain the facility that they have received. And this is something that, of course, makes the change in a something like in a long term. So you can see that this is something that we really change the community lifestyle, and it's going to be sustainable also in the future. So this is what really struck me while I was there.
And the way they engaged with the villagers and the kids and everything, like it's almost like they were, going to visit a family or a friend and everything like that. So that kind of stuck with me too.
When we visited the house next to the primary school on the second day in the Cockstruck village, and we met the man there who showed out also his diaries, and he explained to us how much his life has changed since he received the biosand filter. And he told us, now I'm okay, I no longer feel sick, my grandchildren as well, they can go to school. So we really the impact that only a biosand filter and a latrine.
Such an amazing experience. We are so thankful to have the founder and chair of Just a Drop with us this morning, Fiona Jeffery, OBE, and I'll explain that a little bit later. We also behind the scenes have Brendan Hanlon, who is her head of fundraising and communications for Just a Drop. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, Fiona, and to Brendan and also Carrie behind the scene. So let's just jump right in. So help us understand what inspired you to found and to start Just a Drop.
Well, first of all, Daisy, thank you ever so much for inviting us here today. And, it's been, can I just say how wonderful it has been to be able to partner with BAC all this time. And hopefully that film that you've just shown has just given everybody some indication of the real impact that you are all able to have in country with communities, and without you we couldn't do what we are doing. So our very sincere and grateful thanks, and it's a real pleasure to be with you all today. So to go back to your question, what inspired me to establish Just a Drop? Well, it evolved a bit out of an accident in some ways. I find myself in a position of influence in my industry. I was running the world's largest business-to-business travel and tourism event in the world, which was attracting over 5,000 companies from nearly 200 countries across the world, and sort of participants in the region of about 50,000 people. And as the strength of our product grew, because what we did as a team, we did well, so I founded our influence, and I realized that as a result, I was able to have the credibility that had a voice within that industry to be able to influence and shape it in a way that I felt could be more positive than what it was doing. So back in 1996, I decided to tackle my industry's commitment, or should I say lack of commitment, to the environment. I recognised that there was enormous growth going on within my industry, but I also felt that if we kept growing exponentially as we were in danger of destroying the very product we were seeking to promote, which was the planet. And I was aware that the industry was using the world as its product, but it wasn't doing very much to respect the environment and protect it. So I set up back then an initiative called Environmental Awareness Day. And that evolved over time with a partnership with the United Nations, a World Tourism Organization, to become World Responsible Tourism Day. And in essence, it was an educational platform, face-to-face, educating the industry about environmental issues. But the reality was at that time, our industry wasn't really interested in environmental issues. And out of a potential audience of 45,000 people, at the very first event that I ran, 30 people turned up. So I thought, okay, the environment's still important, but I really felt I needed to come up with a better idea that would engage people with a greater sense of urgency. And at that time, I'd just become a mum, and I recognised that a lot of people working in the travel and tourism sector were also parents. So I decided to come up with an idea that touched children and their families, was global in its reach because we're a global industry, but at the same time was environmentally sound. So sticking with my core values for protecting the environment. And I then learned at that time, a child died every 17 seconds from dirty water, that it was the biggest killer of children under the age of 5 back then, and that just £1 could impact a child's access to safe water. So very naively, I just thought, if I can get just £1 from everyone coming to World Travel Market, then that would give me £45,000. And then collectively as an industry, we could make a big difference with that. And that's why we called it Just a Drop, because the principle was, if everybody gave a little, then collectively we could make a difference. And then the other sort of, I suppose, major aha moment, as it were, was happened when I was bathing my 2 children. Cameron was 4 and Lauren was a few months old. And Cameron had the really bad habit of sucking the dirty water out of a face cloth in the bath. And I used to tell him not to do it because the water was dirty. But one evening I said to him, like, Cameron, you're very lucky to be able to do that. And he looked at me quizzically and he said, why, mummy? And I said, well, some children become very sick if they do that. And he said, do they die? And I said, yes, in some instances they do. So he came out the bath and I'm drying Lauren and he's meant to be getting into his pajamas. And when I find him next, he's at his toy box and he's pulling toys out of his toy box. And I'm actually quite cross with him. And I'm saying, Cameron, you're meant to be getting ready for bed. And he just turned around to me and he said, Mummy, take these toys to the children in Africa so they have something to play with whilst they get better. And I just thought then, Daisy, if a 4-year-old child can understand the importance of safe, clean water, surely I could encourage my industry to get behind and start giving back to communities across the world that they impacted. And in truth, the one thing I have learned on this journey is that it doesn't matter where you live and under what circumstances, parents all want the same thing for their children. They want them to be safe, they want them to be healthy, and they want them to be able to get a good education. And what I learned was that by providing people with access to safe, clean water, that really does help achieve all of that and so much more. So in a roundabout way, that's how it all evolved.
Gosh, that is such an impactful story. And I'm sure a lot of our employees who are parents or aunts or uncles like myself can just imagine being in a situation where a 4-year-old really kind of elevates the need in our world and brings that close to home. And so there's so many additional questions I could ask about that, and I'm sure that Cameron and Lauren are also involved in Just a Drop. But one of the questions I did want to ask is, you established Just a Drop when you were a new mom, and so balancing all of the priorities that come with just trying to provide focus to your children and a safe environment, healthy environment for them, and then balancing the work. A lot of our employees share that same kind of challenge. Do you have any insights or tips that you can maybe share with them about how to maneuver and navigate?
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating, isn't it? And it's actually quite useful to look back. I remember when I first became a mum and knew I wanted to continue my career, and I was concerned that how people would view that, and would they think that I would be less good at my job? And actually, it was quite a surprise to me that I suddenly found out that I was actually better at my job because of becoming a mum, because I became a better people manager. Having kids helped put issues at work into perspective. And as a result, I would handle a problem in a much calmer, more balanced, more problem-solving orientated way. So I thought that was quite an enlightenment for me at the time. I also think because you have to get home, or I know we're all doing home working more now, but you have to relieve childcare, etc. It does make you more efficient. It makes you more focused on what you're doing. You have to prioritize better. So I just got smarter about the way I worked. I know most mums and dads will feel this. You feel that you're rushed off your feet and that you're juggling all the time. And I suppose some of the techniques I used was, when the kids, particularly when they were young, I would make sure that I got home to relieve the childcare, and I'd spend that valuable time with them. But once they had gone to bed, I was able to go back to my desk, and that's where flexible working plays a really important part, I think. And I think there's a lot more flexible working now than there used to be. It wasn't a thing that was introduced. We had to be in the office 9 till 5 when I was working, and you always did more than that. But with flexible working, I do believe you can achieve. There's nothing that you can't achieve, in truth. I would batch cook at the weekends. The one thing about doing that, it used to really annoy me, is that my husband would generally get back before I did, and so he would have taken the stuff out of the freezer and was cooking it, and the kids would think that it was Daddy that always cooked, when actually I'd spent all weekend cooking. But it's you create your own techniques, don't you? And I was lucky. I had a very supportive husband, and you have to communicate a lot. You just have to communicate either with your families that's supporting you, or your childcare that's supporting you, your partner that's supporting you. So good communications is key. And I think flexible working is key. I think that's very important. And then there is no reason why none of us can't enjoy successful careers and happy home lives. And in fact, my daughter said to me quite recently, she said, because we can all be racked with guilt as well, can't we? Or I certainly could. And she said to me, Mum, I don't feel as if we ever suffered because you were working. But whether that's completely truthful, I probably have my own guilty moments. But knowing that she felt reassured, I found that reassuring. And my son felt the same. So.
Wow. Well, we can definitely see that you balanced and had such a huge impact on your family and kind of our global family as well. Just a reminder to our audience, if you have questions, please place them in the chat. Again, you can see and hear us, we can't see and hear you, so make sure you place those questions in the chat. I do want to come to something, Fiona, when you talked about kind of your personal guilt or your story. What we see is someone who is so accomplished, who's made such an impact in our world, to the point that in 2012, you received an OBE, which is a high and distinguished honor. It may be a little less familiar for our colleagues around the world, so I would love for you to share kind of what led to that award or that recognition, and how it's helped to impact and shape your work.
Well, to be honest, I don't really talk about it very much, Daisy. I was very surprised to receive it. It was a huge honour. I was just running an event. I was just running World Travel Market, and when I received the letter from the Queen, I don't think I really grasped at the time what was contained within it. I do remember reading, "You can't mention this to anybody," sort of thing, and I put it aside. And it wasn't until 2-3 weeks later, after World Travel Market, my husband picked up the letter and was reading it, and he said, "Do you realise what this is saying?" And I hadn't really appreciated it, and the fact was I had to write back to the palace and say whether I was going to accept it or not. But it was for services to travel and tourism, and I think it was related to the significant global growth in tourism that World Travel Market had contributed towards. But I think it was also in relation to championing the environment and tackling those difficult issues at a time when other people weren't interested. And you know, to end up receiving something where your own industry feels that you've made a lasting contribution, you know, thankfully, sustainability and the impact of what we do to the planet and everybody's well-being is now part of our day-to-day dialogue. We hear it in the media all the time. Businesses are now addressing it. Governments can't ignore it any longer. So it's all part of a longer-term movement. But I would say my perspective on things, I tend to take long-term perspectives. I think that's where change happens and how change can evolve. And so yes, that was what really came from it.
Got it. Well, congratulations again. You mentioned long-term perspective and sustainability, and I'm glad that came up. So I recently participated in our visit to Cambodia to check on the projects that we had completed there. And one of the things that really impressed me was we saw other NGOs or other organizations that had come, maybe installed a well or provided some temporary support, which, you know, all of the support we can provide is helpful. But one of the things Just a Drop does is really focus on providing sustainability for the community, empowering them through education and giving them the right tools so that when Just a Drop or Water for Cambodia, which is the local partner, moves to a next project, that community can still see the impact long term. And so I would love to just hear you talk about maybe some of the education that Just a Drop provides. And also, I know that there was something around hygiene for women that's on the horizon in Cambodia. Would love to hear you speak to that.
Well, I think it's really great you noticed this, Daisy, when you were out in Cambodia, because I'd say that it's one of the most important aspects of our work. And I don't think enough international NGOs focus on it enough. It has always sat in Just a Drop's DNA related to sustainability, for all the reasons that I tried to explain before, in terms of not ever wanting to let down communities or funders, and for people to have trust and faith that when they partnered with Just a Drop, they were making a long-term investment that would reap viable returns. And in the environments that we're working, you're often working with communities that don't have a high level of education, haven't had the opportunity, and so their training has been very limited. And yet you see, when they do have access to the training that we give them, also how very empowering it is. So to give you a few examples, I remember seeing a young lad in Uganda who'd been trained on how to take apart a borehole, clean it and put it back together again. That was all part of our training to ensure the long-term sustainability of the borehole, and if anything broke down, the community were equipped to be able to fix it. And when I asked him how long it had taken him to learn that skill, he said 2 to 3 months. But he added, my family is really proud of me, and my village is really proud of me. And now I want to become a mechanical engineer. And the fact that he'd had that training really it fueled his knowledge and his ambition, and he could see a better future for himself and his family as a result. And then about 18 months ago, I met Grace, and she is a mother of 4, and she herself had had no education. She couldn't afford to send her children to school, but also she said that she didn't really see the point anyway. And we gave her an income generating loan to enable her to set up the restaurant that she wanted to run. And she got training in bookkeeping and how to manage her income and her expenditure. And incredibly, within a few months, she had paid back the loan. And she had expanded her restaurant business. And she said that with the training that she had received through Just a Drop, she hadn't appreciated that somebody like her could have an education, and that had really made her see the value in it. And she was so proud now that she could afford to send her children to school, and she was sending them to school because she really believed that it would give them a better future. And that was something, again, she had never really understood before, that experience. And then going back to Cambodia, which is where you saw, one of the things is that, many girls around the world suffer from a lack of menstrual hygiene education. And because of that, they just drop out of school. And this results in early pregnancy, and they just don't have their own independent futures. But by educating them, and not just them, but the boys and the teachers, male and female, educating the community about what menstrual hygiene is and what's happening to women's bodies, and the fact that it's natural, and that there are getting rid of all the taboos, and creating environments with proper toilets and wash facilities that enable women and girls to keep themselves clean, encourages them to stay on in school. And then we also train them on creating their own menstrual hygiene, reusable pads. And with getting the skill from sewing, it also gives them the opportunity to have other skills to generate an income when they leave school as well. So it's, water's the start, but after that, there are so many things that are knock-on effects from water, sanitation and hygiene education that can enable people's futures to change and to let people flourish.
Yeah, you said change, and internally we titled this conversation Small Change, Big Difference, because it starts with just a drop of water, but you see people's minds opening up about education, about how they live their families, what career aspirations they have. And so impactful. I have several other questions, but we do have some questions from our audience that I want to make sure we get to. So let me come to you, Carrie, for the first question.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about water, sanitation, and hygiene. Fiona, could you describe how, when, and why microloans have become a part of Just a Drop's program and the impacts that those microloans are having?
Okay, I think we started to explore the feasibility of doing microloans about five years ago. And we started, and a big part of it was about helping. Once women no longer have to spend 3 to 4, 5 hours trekking to collect water day in, day out, they have got time to start doing more income related generating activity. And by being able to generate an income, it then opens up the opportunity for them to pay for their children's education and create a better life and better homes for their families. So that was the sort of starting point from it. And we would work with a small group of 20 women. We would give them a small loan, we would give them the training and the skills required. Some of them looked to develop skills in hairdressing, some of it was brick making, some of it was growing crops, tending animals. It was a small loan which over a period of time they could pay back, and once that loan is paid back, they could either plan to expand that loan and expand their business with a further loan, or the loan gets passed on to another women's group. And the impact, I mean, these women are so ambitious in themselves. As I said at the beginning, they want the same things that we do out of life. They want to be able to give their children the futures that they haven't necessarily had. And so through the income generating loans, we're just giving them the step up that they need to train, develop, and create a better future for themselves and for their families. And it has been incredibly rewarding. It's been one of the most rewarding aspects of our work, because the feedback is so quick. It's amazing. Once they've got the opportunity to take the initiative and move forward with it, they start to transform their lives, and they're so positive and enthusiastic and quite courageous in many ways. So yeah, no, it's been a very rewarding aspect of our work, and one that we've looked to expand into other destinations as the opportunity arises and groups of women are ready to do that.
Got it. Thank you so much. We are nearing the end of our time, and I have several additional questions, but one that I did want to make sure we get to before we wrap up is there's some other things that Just a Drop has coming up. And so again, you've already talked about water is kind of that entry point, but talk to us a little bit about the Walk to the Well, which is an upcoming campaign that you have.
Well, thank you, Daisy. We are so excited about this campaign and we would love to get everybody at BAC behind it. At the heart of the campaign is Anne, and she's a real life 32-year-old mum with 2 children living in Kenya. And Anne walks 9 kilometres every day to collect water for her family, like so many other women across Africa that do that. And what we did is we filmed Anne with a drone from the start of her journey to the end. And with the footage that we've created, which is all real life footage, VCCP, our agency, who have dedicated hours of pro bono time to the campaign, have created the world's longest Twitter feed, enabling you to follow Anne's journey as it is in real time, and experiencing her hopes, her fears, her emotions as she makes this journey every day of her life. And through the Twitter feed, you're encouraged to follow her journey. And as you decide to drop off the journey, because it's over 2,000 tweets, where as you'd look to drop off, because it will take probably about an hour to follow the whole way there and back, we're asking you to like the tweet. And we will then tweet you back and tell you how far you've walked. But you might have walked, so it will say, "Hi Daisy, congratulations, you've walked 3.6 kilometres, but Anne has to continue walking her 9 kilometres. And if you want to stop the toil of women and children going to collect water every day, then click here and donate $5 to Just a Drop." And the funds that we raise from the campaign will not only help Just a Drop, but will also help build a sand dam for Anne's community. And obviously, having experienced the challenge, we're then asking you to retweet it so that we can vocalise as much as possible the sort of journeys that women go on day in, day out, and try and help us all put an end to that through the campaign on World Water Day. So we'd love you to all get involved and see how you feel, and feedback what you think of the campaign to us, because we'd be really interested.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am supportive, although I'm not on Twitter yet, but I will join Twitter after this. The partnership with Just a Drop and BAC, we have completed 10 projects, supported with close to 100K and even more. There's more work for us to do, more partnership, more opportunity. And so we are out of time, which I am deeply saddened because there's so many additional questions in the chat. There's so much more that I think you could share with us. But to our employees, make sure you follow them on social media. They do have a presence. Make sure you join with Walk to the Well. But then we have our own internal campaigns that we want to make sure everyone supports as well, because Just a Drop, right? It's starting a lot of impact, and we can be a part of how we impact our world. So Fiona, thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't thank you enough. Thank you for the time. Thank you for all the work that you do and just having a heart and a passion for our people. To Brendan, I know that you're so heavily engaged. Really appreciate your support as well. Okay. To Carrie behind the scenes, thank you so much for making this happen. And to our BAC employees, I hope that you take this as great information and a call to action, and see what we can do to help further the cause of Just a Drop. So with that, Fiona, any last words or anything to our audience before we close?
I would just like to say, on behalf of all of the Just a Drop team, who are really committed and dedicated to the work that we do in Just a Drop, a massive thank you to all of you, because we cannot do what we do without you. And it is about teamwork. And we've always taken the view at Just a Drop that our partners are very much part of our team, as are the communities that we support and help, because they're part of our team as well. And it's working together that collectively we end up making a difference and making it better for everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you. Small change, big difference. Well, have a lovely day, everyone. Again, thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.